RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Pleasant good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It is Friday, May the 10th, 2024. This is program number 1175 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. In addition to radio on 101.1 FM, you can also get us at our website, rcistlucia.com. We are also streaming live via our Facebook page. Just search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And please be sure as well to like and share that link with your friends and family. And if you want to call in today to tell us what's on your plate and give us some food for thought, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also message in to our WhatsApp number. That is 724-0008. Or if you want to call in, you can do that as well to our WhatsApp number. Again, 724-0008. Birthday greetings for today going out to Mr. Barry George. Happy birthday to you, sir. And we do hope that you're having a fantastic day. And I think a wonderful dance production as part of Arts in the City was put on recently. And so kudos to you and all the work that you're doing in the creative space. Now, a bit of history. In the year 1497 on this day, the Italian navigator Amerigo Vespucci left for his first voyage of the New World. In fact, that's the gentleman who came up with that idea, that in fact it was no longer the Indies, the East Indies that was found, but in fact an entirely new continent named in his honor. In the year 1775, the Second Continental Congress was convened in Philadelphia, and issues included paper currency for the first time. In the year 1801, during the first Barbary War, the Barbary pirates of Tripoli declared war on the United States of America. And we saw in the year 1940 on this day, Winston Churchill succeeding Neville Chamberlain as British Prime Minister and head of a coalition government at that time. 1960, a U.S. atomic submarine, the USS Triton, completed on this day. In 1960, the first submerged circumnavigation of the globe. And in 1994, on this day, May the 10th, Nelson Mandela was sworn in as South Africa's first black president. We now move on to our dish of the day. The daily dish is brought to you the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Grozile, and Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here for our dish of the day. We did want to touch on a matter from yesterday. In fact, from not even yesterday, even the day before yesterday, we began dealing with it and mentioning it. And that had to do with the issue of access to finance, and that's a big issue. And being able to use banking services certainly has been a very important aspect towards good financial management, being able to set aside money safely into a space and to be able to withdraw that when needed. And so banking has been around for a while. And of course, in our history of today, We went as far back as I think 1775, where the whole issue was that of paper currency. Before that, of course, coinage was pretty much the staple, so to speak, in terms of having currency, having wealth. And that, of course, was a big deal for hundreds or thousands of years, being able to actually have set currency. But, of course, a lot of that was deemed important because the actual mineral or the actual, metal that it was made on had a particular value as well. So whether you were using silver coins or gold coins, and then later on bronze coins and copper coins. And so those things over time, of course, shifted. And so the whole idea of paper money was back in 1775 a pretty big deal. And so here we are now in 2024, and the issue at hand is that of shifting away from not so much about necessarily paper completely, but really becoming more dependent on cashless transactions, not having to be able to carry paper in your or cash in your pockets, in your wallets and purses, but in fact depending more on cards and also depending more on applications, on software, to be able to control your finances and to manage your money and your spending. Now, that, of course, perhaps for the purpose of many banks out there, for them is the way to go. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot easier. There are fewer hands to deal with transferring of money. A lot of it can be done through automation, transferring from one part of the world to another. It's a lot of it is becoming more possible through this paying of bills and all of that. And that perhaps should really help to some degree in terms of overall of financial management, because one would say that, look, you have the means to be able to keep track of who you paid, when you paid them, exactly how much you paid them, without necessarily going to the bank and getting a printed statement. And those are the things that used to happen before. You would get those things coming out on a monthly basis, your account activity and whatnot. And again, banks see that as a means of savings as well, having to print less, having to send out less through the mail, and it all seems to be pretty good for a lot of those institutions. But the reality is we do still have a society that is at different places when it comes to the adoption and utilization of technology. And that, I think, is really where it's at. So, yes, there was a time when paper was a big technological shift in terms of finance. And now the shift is away from paper and more towards electronic transactions, more towards electronic banking, and even to the point, of course, of the whole concept of digital currency as well. And we are going to, of course, continue to see that shift, but we are in this period of change and this period of transition. And it therefore means that there has to be some balance in terms of how you can then allow for other people who may not be at that point yet to be able to continue to deal with those transactions. Now, some banks perhaps have it worse than others, and a lot of it may be dependent upon where people bank and how they bank, but certainly there has to be some minimum standards when it comes to actually providing services, banking services. I think that's really where there are gaps, and we spoke about the importance of those gaps in the legislation that looks to manage institutions and banks and financial institutions, not just banks, but also, of course, other lending agencies, insurance companies, a whole host of companies that deal with finance. And so it is very critical that there is amendment to the legislation to be able to ensure that there is sufficient protection for all individuals who want to be able to access finance. And that, of course, is something that we've got to look at carefully and see how things are moving. In some countries, you're seeing, of course, far less cash in circulation, but there is still cash in circulation. And so, therefore, it is important that we are provided with, the facilities and the amenities to be able to exact that. Now, of course, this debate has come out as a result of a particular financial institution sending out a flyer indicating that they are interested in changing the system to limit what people can, in fact, do at the counter. And, we've heard the stories before, of people wanting, in the old days, somebody would want to go to the bank so that they could see their money, and they would want you to literally withdraw all the money so that they could see it in front of them, they could count it, and so that they could put it back so that they would know it's there. I mean, those days are perhaps gone, and there's a greater level of confidence with the operation of our financial institutions. People know and understand how banking works a lot better now. But we have, of course, those fears because of what may have happened in the past, where there have been issues with runs on banks and the value of money. Perhaps here we are very blessed and fortunate, given our stability of our monetary stability. The value of the EC dollar has never gotten to a point where it's shifted. So there's that known stability within our system. No point with somebody wondering, well, I may have $100 in the bank today, and in a week's time, that $100 may have devalued, and it really is only worth now $60 or something like that. So we should be very thankful for that aspect of our system, our financial system here in the Eastern Caribbean. But at the same time, of course, it is important that the institutions are sympathetic or empathetic, rather, to the reality of the culture and the space that exists when it comes to its users and its clients. And so, yes, we want to see some change. Yes, no doubt about it. More individuals should be utilizing online banking, and no doubt, I think, as time goes on, you are going to see that happen, and perhaps there are steps that could be taken to encourage, to educate, to assist individuals. But the reality is that there is still that, especially amongst the older generation, there will still be that need for services to be sympathetic and considerate to their specific realities. And so I think it's perhaps a little too early to be putting forward such a mandate that there should be really only certain types of transactions being done at a point or at a counter. But I think certainly there should be some reasonable expectation that when you go inside a bank, that you could certainly do that transaction. Maybe what it might mean is that you should potentially be seeing whether you can have within the interim perhaps a few other individuals who are simply just pointing out, well, you could do this transaction at the ATM, or we could actually assist you with getting online. Do you need somebody to assist you with knowing how the system works, or to explain that to you? Maybe that is something that we certainly need to do a lot more. So if institutions are desirous of getting more people to be able to use the technology, they should certainly be seeking ways to be assisting individuals in that regard. And then we can be speaking about later on some sort of a move that would involve, reducing on the number of services that you may have available in person. But let's hope that these moves and the cries of the public on this matter are taken into consideration, because no doubt there'll be lots of people who go into a bank and they get a great shock when they find out that they can't do a certain transaction. And then what happens then if the person doesn't have maybe a working bank card, or the person doesn't have an app on their phone, or they don't have a smartphone, perhaps? There are lots of these realities out there, or they may not even have access to the internet. So we have to think about a lot of these issues, and this is not, of course, just about that type of transaction. There have been others with the matter of checks, and that's also another major one. The idea, and this has been apparently happening for quite some time, that you in fact cannot get a check cashed unless if you've got to actually have an account with the specific bank for you to be able to effectively get those funds. And of course, that takes time. And what if you're not an account holder within that particular bank? Should there not be an obligation of a bank which is issuing checks in their name for somebody? Should there not be some level of obligation that you should be able to honor that check to the individual to whom the check has been given? So many of these types of issues, I think, are very important to a lot of people. A lot of people may get paid by check. They may not necessarily have an account. And so then what do they do in that type of situation? The banks may tell you that, there are certain risks that they are carrying in terms of people being issued checks, and really they want, for the purpose of being able to see where money is going, they want to be able to see that going through some account or whatnot. But the reality is we still have checks as a form of transferring of money. So it therefore means that there should be a better way of introducing some of these changes. I think there should be certain things that are somewhat sacrosanct when it comes to banking, and that there are certain obligations that banks do need to hold on to, even though there may be lots of pressures at maybe the levels of the boards and whatnot to be able to effect certain changes sooner rather than later. So I think the environment has to be set by the regulators, and so there is certainly some work to be done in this regard to ensure that the clients, the customers, the other stakeholders, of course, people who are using those services, are given fair and perhaps fair opportunity to be able to get the type of services which they actually want. And I think that is very important for the general public at this time. That's our dish of the day. When we come back, we'll be taking in your calls.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A plus. Need all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also glass, glassware and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Lance Road in Castries, Bosses Grozile, and Slack Street in Viewfort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also reach us via WhatsApp. That is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. Now, I believe sometime last week we did make mention of the passing of Dr. Leslie Lewis. And for those who are not very familiar with that name, in fact, he is the twin brother of former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Sir Vaughan Lewis. And he, in fact, passed quite recently in New York City. And he is, in fact, due to be, his funeral is carded for next week, Tuesday. I just wanted to share, in fact, a bit of a passage which was published at York University, York College, which is part of the system of universities of New York, City University of New York, CUNY. On his passing, and he was in fact a professor emeritus of that system. So let me just quickly share that Dr. Leslie Lewis, Professor Emeritus and inspiration to many at York College, passed away at age 84. York College interim President Claudia Schrader and the York College family mourn the passing of Dr. Leslie A. Lewis, Professor Emeritus. A stalwart biology professor at York College, CUNY, for nearly 40 years, Dr. Lewis died in his 84th year, according to his family. Dr. Jack Schlein, a fellow biologist and friend who served as the department's pre-med advisor for many years, recalled his friend's importance to York and the biology department. Quote, Leslie Lewis was totally dedicated to his students in a manner that inspired me, said Schlein. He did as much to inspire underrepresented students to pursue careers in scientific research as possibly any other academic in the country. But his dedication to his academic career paled in comparison to his care and love for his wife, Pam. I will miss him. One such former student, Dr. Andrew G. Campbell, of class of 81, Professor Emeritus of Medical Science, Division of Biology and Medicine, MMI, at Brown University, recalled his professor's influence. Quote, This is so sad, said Dr. Campbell. He was an inspiration, a role model, a mentor, and if I might say, a model black man. He played an important role in the lives of so many, and I, in particular, am grateful for all he has given me. His guidance contributed much to my professional success. End quote. Dr. Lewis's retirement party held in York's faculty dining room brought out numerous former mentees from across the country to pay tribute to him. Amongst them was Dr. Angelo Gauss, who said Dr. Lewis was like a father to him, following the death of his own father, a physician in Haiti, while he was a student at York. Gauss, a highly respected urologist and former full professor at the University of Miami, now practices in Miramar, Florida. He was valedictorian of York's class of 1986 and earned his medical degree at Yale University, where he graduated summa cum laude. Dr. Lewis played an integral part in my personal development, said Dr. Gauss. I give him most of the credit for my academic success. I have carried his teachings and work ethic with me for the rest of my life. I love him like my own father. I will miss him. May he rest in peace. Another distinguished graduate of the Lewis Lab at York was Deborah Passard, MD, famous for her award-winning research in pediatric AIDS at Johns Hopkins University. She served as keynote speaker at York's 2023 commencement, where former mentors Lewis and Schlein were there to greet her. Born and raised on the Caribbean island of St. Lucia, where his mother was a teacher and his father an attorney, Leslie Arthur Lewis got his middle name from his uncle, Sir Arthur Lewis, who lived 1915 to 1991, a Nobel Prize winner in economics and professor of political economy at Princeton University. According to his curriculum vitae, Dr. Leslie Lewis's research focused on mechanistic studies of transposition within the IS3 family of insertion sequences. Specifically, he explored a novel model of DNA-protein interaction that sheds light on the basis of two distinct complexes crucial for the unique transposition pathway observed in this group of transposable elements. And that was a piece written on the website of York College, part of the City University of New York, CUNY, and honoring one of their former professors and, of course, native of St. Lucia, Dr. Leslie Lewis. And so we just wanted to extend our condolences to the Lewis family at this time, and of course the extended family of Lewises and Thibbles at his passing. And certainly he made a major contribution in his field of biology. And it's always good to remember that there are so many St. Lucians out there in different parts of the world who are doing some very interesting work, making interesting contributions in a number of different fields around the world. And quite often we're not even aware of them and what they're doing. And I know many people would have been actually quite surprised to even have heard that Dr. Savon Lewis actually has a twin or had a twin brother. And so certainly it's good to have that context sometimes. But that's that's a little piece I just wanted to share there before we actually head across to our weather news. I think we could probably just tell you that it's good. It looks like it's pretty dry, but and for those who are enjoying jazz over the weekend, they probably like the fact that it's going to remain dry, although the Saharan dust is not really helping very many out there with allergies. So let's take in that weather news at this time.
Island style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style, whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style, oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island style. We have tiles and insets, pieces and ground. Everything you need, we sort the house out. For the best price and the latest style, take a little drive down to Island Style Car. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, quality price, service choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. Or call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's of course on the 1.1. It's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Tile and Bath. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. The winds will be blowing from between the east and east-southeast near 16 miles per hour or 26 kilometers per hour. The weather fair to partly cloudy and hazy with a few brief isolated showers. Persons with respiratory ailments and dust allergies are advised to take the necessary precaution due to reduced air quality. Also, small craft operators are advised to exercise caution due to reduced visibility. The forecast for Los Angeles is partly cloudy to occasionally cloudy and hazy with scattered showers over the Leeward and Northern Windward Islands. Further south, fair to partly cloudy and hazy with a few brief showers. And the weather summary: weak unstable conditions associated with a trough system. An upper level jet stream will cause cloudiness and scattered showers over the northern portion of the region during the next 24 hours. Elsewhere, generally dry and stable conditions will prevail. Also, Saharan dust will continue to cause a reduction in visibility and air quality across the Eastern Caribbean region during the next couple of days. And this was the weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bar.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Island style. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, we'll have to make the right choice. Island style. Whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style. Oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island style.
We have tiles and thin sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need to sort the house out. For the best price and the latest style, take a little drive down to Island Style Car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, quality price, service choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Belarus, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. Or call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And we are about 25 minutes out from 2 o'clock. And of course, the number to call in is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also message into our WhatsApp number or as well on Facebook. And you can follow us there. And of course, as mentioned, yes, we are looking into having a pretty dry and hot period for the next couple of days, if not weeks. And of course, there have been calls by the Water and Sewage Company regarding trying to exercise as much restraint as possible when it comes to your water use. It is, of course, coming at a time when you've got lots of visitors coming onto the island. So, of course, you've got the pressures coming in terms of utilization from the tourist sector. And at the same time, of course, it's getting hotter. So people may very want to be taking more showers during the day. And so a lot of these things, of course, we hope that we can manage and keep that balance. Lots of other places are, in fact, getting lots of rainfall. The Leeward Islands, I understand, Antigua had some flooding issues quite recently, and many parts of the world are, in fact, facing significant flooding events. I think in southern Brazil, they've been seeing some significant flooding where there were suggestions of rainfall for 12 hours straight. And those are not the only places, in fact, being impacted by this current weather period. And I think the suggestions, of course, that we're seeing the impacts, is it of La Nina? It's El Nino at this time. So we are going to be seeing some of these strange weather events as we continue to move on through the year. Now, to segue a little bit away from this matter, of course, we always try to share some perspectives on history as well. And there's one, of course, which I thought was very interesting. We shared one particular piece that was done looking at the interpretation of history in hindsight. And sometimes we look back and we think, well, why didn't they do this, or why couldn't they do that? And we apply from our own vantage point, where we, of course, have lots and lots of privileges already, and we take a lot of things for granted, particularly technology, and we just simply think, well, this is, these people couldn't do something because for whatever reason, we just thought that maybe they just weren't able to or whatever. So we looked at that whole history through the lens, so to speak, of the wheelbarrow. Well, this very same individual who produced that piece has a very interesting one about the matter of colonization. And we've got a lot of, again, ideas about what that involved and how were the colonizers able to actually effect a lot of the things. How were they able to, in fact, conquer and peoples and regions, and what were the real factors at play in terms of making things happen? And so, of course, even as today, we mention Amerigo Vespucci, after whom the entire region of this hemisphere, the Americas, is named after. And he was one of those very early explorers who, again, and remember what was happening at that time was that as a result of the rise of the Ottoman Empire in the East and the greater control of that, what was the main route for trade at that time for Europe and Asia, passing through that region, that was no longer easy. It was then controlled by a significant empire, which was, in fact, quite aggressive towards European presence, and, of course, saw the fall of Constantinople and the push into the Balkans region by the Ottomans during that period of time. The Italians at that point were very important in terms of their role in terms of that trade that was going on between the East and the West. And so it was during that period that a number of these Italian navigators, Italian interests were in fact looking for where to pivot away from that Silk Road route, and to see how now they could in fact engage in developing of other routes. And so many of them ended up in the courts of these Western European countries, of course including Spain, which was just coming out of this period, the Reconquista period, and it was also going to France and to even England as well, looking to see whether they could in fact get that kind of support, and Portugal. And so that is where individuals like Vespucci came out of, and were then instrumental in terms of those early voyages looking for new routes to get to the east, to get to China and India, and many of these other countries where they could get what they were looking for at the time: spices, minerals, gems, whatever the case may be, manufactured products as well. And so it then led, of course, this massive thrust towards, once there was a realization that there was this entire new world, so to speak, this massive thrust of European colonization began, first with the Spanish, but then later on, of course, with the Portuguese in Brazil, and as well many others, the British, the French, the Dutch, the Swedes, all of them got involved in this period of exploration. But how did they were really able to conquer and to overcome what were very, very developed societies and civilizations. And we're speaking about the Aztec civilization, for instance, and the Inca civilization, and which had very, very large populations, significant, even right here in the Caribbean with the Tainos, and so very large and well organized administration and whatnot, and sometimes we think that they were able to do so through their strength of military power, but in fact there are lots of suggestions that in fact that was not really the case. So I just wanted to share this this video, this clip, this audio coming off of YouTube. And as I mentioned, it is in fact entitled "The Real Reason Why Europe, the Real Reasons European Colonialism Was Possible." The real reasons European colonialism was possible.
In this video, I'm going to answer 3 questions. First of all, why were the Europeans able to colonize North and South America in the 1500s? Secondly, why did they not also conquer Africa and Asia at the same time? And then third, why is it that later on in the late 1800s, they suddenly were able to colonize Africa and Asia? So first of all, that first question, why were the Europeans able to conquer North and South America? It's not what a lot of people think. A lot of people think that the Europeans were able to colonize the Americas because they had better technology. And that's not really true. The Europeans did have some technologies that the indigenous peoples did not have. So they had ironworking, they had gunpowder weapons, but those things in and of themselves were not sufficient. There are actually a lot of myths surrounding the European colonization of the Americas. I'm not really going to get into them in this video. There are myths like the Aztecs were overawed by the Spanish. They thought the Spanish were gods. They were scared of the horses that the Spanish brought. All that's not true. The Europeans were able to colonize the Americas not because they had better technology, but because they had diseases that the people of the Americas did not have resistance to. Because back in the Eastern Hemisphere, people had lived alongside domesticated animals. And when you live alongside other species in very close proximity, sometimes diseases will jump from some other species, from your livestock, to humans. By and large, humans in the Western Hemisphere did not live alongside animals in close proximity. And that meant there were fewer pathogens jumping from other species to humans in North and South America. So they had fewer diseases. When the Europeans and the Africans came to the Americas, they brought with them the pathogens that existed in Europe and Africa. And they came to the Americas where the people had never encountered these diseases before, and the indigenous people of the Americas died in very large numbers. During the first 150 years after European contact, roughly between the years 1500 and 1650, the indigenous population of the Americas declined by 90%. It was 10% in 1650 what it had been in 1500. So because the indigenous population was so devastated by the pathogens brought over from the Eastern Hemisphere, that made it possible for the Europeans to colonize North and South America. Note here the technological issue. When the Europeans went to the Americas in the 1600s, they did have certain technologies the natives didn't have, but those technologies were 16th and 17th century technologies. And it was not a huge jump for the native peoples to acquire those technologies for themselves. So the Europeans brought horses with them to the Americas, and then the natives adopted horses into their cultures and used horses themselves. The Europeans brought firearms to the Western Hemisphere, and then the natives could acquire guns, and then the natives used guns against the Europeans. But things changed in the 1800s. So this brings me to the third question, which is why was it that all of a sudden in the 1800s the Europeans were able to conquer Africa and Asia? All right, so let's recap here. So the Europeans arrived in the Americas in the 1500s, Spanish and Portuguese. Then in the 1600s, the English, the Dutch, and the French came to the Americas. They ruled over the Americas during the 1700s, and then at the end of the 1700s and during the early 1800s, most of the colonies in the Western Hemisphere became independent republics. And then there's a gap. And then in the middle of the 19th century, the Europeans began colonizing Africa and Asia. So the first question I was going to answer was, why were the Europeans able to colonize the Americas? And the answer is basically diseases. The second question that I was going to answer was, why were they not able to conquer Africa and Asia at the same time that they conquered the Americas? And the answer is diseases. The Africans and the Asians had the same diseases the Europeans had. And also, they had the same technology the Europeans had, for what it's worth. The Europeans were not superior technologically to everyone else in the world. And this is a misconception I come across sometimes. People have this idea that the Europeans were somehow super advanced in the year 1500 compared to everyone else, and they just went around blowing everybody away. That's not true. The Europeans were not more advanced than the other Asian and African kingdoms. When the Portuguese were visiting the African kingdoms in the late 1400s, they were interacting with them as equals. And they would talk about them like, here's another kingdom, this is the kingdom of Congo, and we're a kingdom and they're a kingdom. And that was the attitude they had at that time. It was only later on that the Europeans got an attitude of massive superiority toward the Africans. Okay, so now I come to the third question, which is, why is it that the Europeans were able to colonize Africa and Asia in the late 1800s? And the answer now is technology. Now it is. Because what changed was, beginning in the late 1700s, the Industrial Revolution started happening. And then it got into full swing during the 1800s. And the Industrial Revolution was huge. It is the most significant, most consequential thing that has happened to the human race in 10,000 years. Because it dramatically changed everything about how we live our lives, about everything, about how war is done, but not just war, about how the economy works, about what kinds of jobs we work, about what kind of lifestyle we have. Everything, if you look around in your daily life, every single thing that's there in your daily life is there because of industrialization, and would not be there if it had not been for industrialization. It's easy to overlook how important industrialization was. Industrialization meant that people found new energy sources, specifically the energy source of steam energy. And they were able to use steam energy to do things that people couldn't do before because they hadn't had enough energy to do it. They could make steel bridges and steel ships. They could make all kinds of stuff out of steel now. They could also machine guns, like make guns at higher precision than before. So they can make the guns more effective. And this is the real breakthrough in firearms technology, was with industrialization. And also steam power could be used for transportation. You could power trains now. You can make ships go faster than before. So that gave the Europeans an enormous advantage over everyone else who had not yet gone through industrialization. So there was this brief window of time during the late 1800s and during the 1900s when Europeans and people of European descent had industrial technology and the rest of the world was still trying to catch up. And so there's this narrow window of time in which Europeans were uber powerful compared to everyone else. And that allowed the Europeans to go around and dominate the rest of the world. This is a recent phenomenon. This is something that comes out of the 1800s, and it's because of the fact that industrialization happened in Europe. And now the rest of the world is catching up. But because the Europeans got that early advantage, they got the head start, that locked in a structural advantage for Europeans and people of European descent ever since then. And it locked in a global industrial economy where some countries are the producers of finished manufactured goods and other countries are the suppliers of raw materials to those factories. And there's this power differential and economic differential between different regions of the world now. Now, back in the 1800s, the Europeans were the first ones to industrialize. They were the first ones to take advantage of this military technology. And then they used that on the Africans and the Asians. And then in that way, they were able to conquer the countries of Africa and Asia and colonize them. Meanwhile, in the Americas, those colonies had become independent republics in the early 1800s, but they still functionally served as colonies to Europe. So even though they were nominally independent, they had a subservient relationship to Europe that was created by the Industrial Revolution. Because in Central and South America, they served as suppliers of raw materials for the factories of Europe. Now, in North America, they went through industrialization at the same time the Europeans did. And so they were actually on the beneficiary side of the Industrial Revolution rather than the subservient supplier side of it. And not understanding this timeline can lead to some misunderstandings about how the history played out. Alright, so that'll do it for me. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you for that, and I hope that actually gives a very good insight into especially even the world that we understand it right now, and in fact the changes that have been happening even since that period of industrialization. And of course, a lot of this, in fact, was an understanding of this was part of the underpinning of work that was done by Sir William Arthur Lewis as far back as the 1930s, that it was absolutely critical for regions like the West Indies to industrialize, to actually have that opportunity to go through that same period, that same industrial revolution, if you want to call it that. Now, has it really happened? Not really the case, not so much, certainly in the case of many islands and many parts of the developing world. We still are seeing the same things as being pointed out, that there's lots of extraction coming out of our countries in terms of raw materials, still having to be imported or exported, and then value added to them, manufactured, and then they are sent back in some form or fashion. And that still is, unfortunately, where we find ourselves. What has happened, certainly, which has explained, of course, the growth of many Asian countries, is that they then went through this massive period of industrialization. And, of course, the great case in point is that of China, where it was largely an economy driven on agriculture for a very, very long time, and right up until perhaps the 1960s, and then went through a significant shift in its economy to the point where today somewhere about 40% of China's economy is in fact now driven by industrial output. And even in places that like the United States and Europe, they in fact have gone through this period of industrialization. They've been able to gain the wealth from that, which is, and now they're into this whole new era of services, but these services are on the back of having this platform of industrial output. Let's take in a call, I think, that's coming in through our WhatsApp at this time, and see if we can squeeze in at least one call right now. I'm not too sure if we can get it. Nope, we can't seem to get that call in, unfortunately, for some reason. But yes, as I was mentioning, these countries went through a period where they were able to accrue lots and lots of wealth through the export of these products, which then led to a lot of new industries being created and new services being created. So, in as much as we look at United States and the European Union right now, in the case of the U.S., about 80% of their economy is now service-driven. But some of these services which we're actually even talking about are in fact so vital towards a lot of things. And a lot of these are technologically driven services, which are now exportable very easily around the world. And so, and there, a lot of them are transport services, IT services. And we're now grouping a lot of these things into services, but even the underpinning of these services has a lot to do with the technologies that have been developed through that whole period of industrialization. China even right now is at a point where it's about over half of its economy is actually now service-driven as well. And you're seeing, as most countries do, they go through this phase where they are looking to, the agricultural sector becomes less dominant, but it is not to say that the agricultural sector is not still very important, as is the case with respect to China, as is the case with the European Union or the United States of America. Having that, the output coming from these sectors is still vital towards because they are inputs into the industrial sector, and that is also still a very important foundational, those are foundational sectors which they still very much protect in very many different ways through subsidies and other areas of support in terms of rural development. So it is certainly a very critical undertaking that we still perhaps have to look at with great interest in the case of our islands. China has become the factory of the world. It has certainly has advantages in terms of population, and many other countries following in its footsteps in Southeast Asia. We've seen many of those also industrialized in like manner. Your Koreas, for instance, and of course Japan went through that period of significant industrialization pre-World War II, but certainly it was certainly catapulted over the post-war period into becoming a significant industrial giant as well. And now India is also finding its path with respect to industrialization. It was not as successful as getting into it early on as with respect to China, but certainly they have now been able to get into other fields where they have significant advantage in terms of their population, in particular that of services and in the IT sector and also even in terms of industry. Yes, things like pharmaceuticals, for instance, those are also rising. But India still has a significant part of its population still very much dependent on the rural economy, on agriculture. And so although we have seen here in the case of St. Lucia a significant shift away from agriculture into services, the presence of industry is still fairly weak, and much of that has had to deal with has had to be associated with the absence of cheap energy being a major factor there, and of course the ability to produce at a scale that makes our products cost competitive. So this contextual video I thought was very interesting because it actually does show how early advantages and how early entry into a particular sector is very important sometimes in the long run. And that's how many countries are able to be where they are today. That's our program for the week. And of course, we do hope that everybody continues to enjoy the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival. That's continuing down at the Derek Walcott Square until 5 o'clock. I think there's also a continuation of jazz at Serenity Park that's on. Seems like lots of people had a good time last night with the pure jazz component, and of course, no doubt tonight with lots of the Caribbean fusion happening. I think the Friday night event has perhaps become one of the largest ones, perhaps even surpassing the weekend in terms of the numbers, because of the number of people who are looking for that genre of music. And so, of course, we do hope that everybody has a good one. Wishing all mothers a very happy Mother's Day. And we do hope that we can join you again next week, Monday, for another program of The Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr., saying goodbye.